Thank you for joining us. Columbian is pleased to welcome candidates for Vancouver School Board, position 5. I'm Greg Jane, the editorial page editor, and
I'm Craig Brown, the editor of the Columbian and Columbian.com.
And we're both members of the editorial board, and the other members of the editorial board unfortunately couldn't join us today, but they will check up on this meeting to help us assess the candidates. As mentioned, we have a reporter joining us remotely. He won't be asking questions in this forum, but may be writing about this meeting and may want to speak with you later. And that said, finally, we are recording this. As mentioned, we will post it unedited on our website and our YouTube channel. And we'll go from that. So, on to the candidates. Please take 1 to 2 minutes, introduce yourselves, explain why you are running, and after that we'll get to specific policy questions, and we'll start with Tracie.
All right, so my name is Tracie Barrows. I am currently serving as the Vancouver School Board Director, position 5, running for re-election. I'm a school psychologist. When I ran for school board initially in 2019, really my platform was about bringing that voice to the school board and to decision making. As a school psychologist, I really advocate for social, emotional, mental health needs of our students. And it's really that voice that I feel like is even more crucial during this election. A lot has happened in the past 4 years with COVID. And I definitely, from working in the schools, I definitely have seen an increase in students' mental health needs, behavioral needs, emotional regulation. And so it's really that perspective that I want to continue to bring, and with even more advocacy to our school board. I'm proud of the work that we have done over the past 4 years. As I mentioned, it has been some interesting times being on a school board, but I'm proud of the work that we have done to increase our communication with our community, really getting stakeholder feedback in decisions that we are making, whether it's through school start time, superintendent search, our strategic plan. We've really made a lot of progress towards equity and really using our equity policy in our decision making. It's not just a box that we have checked that we have an equity policy. It's something that we really use as we are looking at programming and budget. And also just really advocating. I'm proud of the work that I have done in advocating for students' mental health needs. When I was chair of the board in 2022, I initiated and advocated for a trauma-informed practices policy. And that passed unanimously in November of 2022. And so I think that is really important work as we move forward. So I would hope that our community and that you as an editorial board would support me in my re-election.
Great, thank you. And just to clarify, which district do you work in?
I work in Evergreen School District.
Okay. Great, thank you. Larry?
My name's Larry Roe, and I've lived in Vancouver for 7 years now. Moved over from Portland, and my 3 children are grown and not in the school. But in addition to having them go through the school and wanting them to do as well as they can, I'm in general dedicated, committed to making sure that every student can have the best opportunities to learn that they can get. For my students, that meant I did much as Mr. Jane has done, which is bounce back and forth between public and private schools, wherever I thought the best opportunities existed. I think that for the majority of our people, the public school is very important to both have students learn from each other and get their own basic education and their own advanced education if they can go that fast. As I volunteered in schools after stopping working for money a while ago, by the way, I was a scientist working for a chemical company and then for Intel for 18 years, mostly in their fabs. So my background is technical. After I stopped working, I started volunteering in Portland Public Schools. It took a while to get them to want to volunteer, an adult in the room, but we started in 2013 and I continued through 2018. When I moved over here, I finished another year at Skyline Middle School. I look at what the board has accomplished in the last 4 years, and it's been significant. They've really gotten a lot better focus on the students and the strategic plan that they've gone through in the last really 2.5 years. I think they're going down a very good path. I think that the hiring and work of the counselors and the psychologists in the Vancouver Public School District has really increased and improved in the last 2 years. However, I think that I can add something to the team that is the 5 school board members, and that is a strategic, measurable viewpoint on what the board gives to the district. So right now we have a set 4 pages of aspirational goals for the district from the board. I would like to see at least some high-level measurable goals that the board gives to the district. So that's why I'm volunteering, along with Tracie, to participate in the board's actions for the next few years.
Great, thank you. Thanks again to both of you. Let's start with one of the big issues locally and nationally surrounding schools is curriculum. And different people want input on that curriculum. How would you assess the Vancouver schools curriculum? What changes would you advocate for? We'll start with Larry.
I'm not the expert in curriculum choice and development, so I think the process that Vancouver Public Schools has for choosing and managing their curriculum is quite a good one. I think they went through a challenge to at least one item in the curriculum during the last year. I got to observe that at the school board meetings, and I thought that the board and the district did a very good job. They identified curriculum that was useful to at least some of the students, and back to getting the best opportunities for each student, you have to have curriculum that meets the needs of the students. The people who can determine that, in my mind, are the teachers of the students. So if there's curriculum that's really objectionable to the community and it somehow got through, then I'm sure that the board will deal with it. If it serves a need for some of our students, then I think we've got the right mechanisms to choose.
And following up on that, do you find any current curriculum objectionable?
I've been exposed to very little of the curriculum. The one that was flagged, I don't find particularly objectionable, no.
What was that?
Gender Queer is a book for people who are going through some anxiety around their development.
But you didn't find it objectionable?
No.
Okay. Tracie, your thoughts on the curriculum? What changes?
Yeah, well, and I was just going to add that book that was challenged was not a part of the curriculum. It's a library material.
Okay.
I don't have any concerns with our curriculum. I think, we have a team, a curriculum and instruction team that will bring new materials forward to the board for us to review. And I think we do need to be diligent about ensuring that we have a system to look for updates and make sure that we are keeping up with curriculum as our system changes and evolves. That input from teachers is important, the curriculum and instruction team. Over this past year, we kind of rolled out a system to really make sure that we are looking at all of our curriculum over the next 6 years. And so kind of which curriculum we're going to look at in what year, so that if we have to make investments, it's not a significant investment all in 1 year, but that we're kind of rolling out kind of that look in evaluating curriculum, investing in new curriculum. And so I think that that's a very thoughtful approach in how we are kind of have that process and that consistency in always looking at what we need to update and evaluating. Is this the most effective curriculum? Is there something new out there? Getting the input from teachers and staff. But no, I don't have any significant concerns with the curriculum that we have moving forward.
Regarding that, what kind of feedback have you gotten from the community?
We get a lot of positive feedback, from our teachers. I think, as part of the board role, a lot of times we are hearing, from people that might be upset with things versus, hey, I'm going to send an email to the board and let them know I think what they're doing is great. So we do occasionally get feedback from parents that are concerned about a book that a class is using, or it's a lot of supplementary materials and things like that. But overwhelmingly, I don't have any. There's no negative feedback about the curriculum or kind of what we're implementing from teachers. And things like
When you do hear from somebody who's upset about it, how do you deal with it?
We all five of us are on. We all get emails about what's going on. It's typically then the board chair that takes the lead in responding to parents. Typically we try to find out more about specific examples of what they are concerned about. And then also often we will then, if we need more information or we need to, have the district look into something, we ask the superintendent to then have his team review the material that the parent is talking about, or get more information. And, for example, if it's a building issue, perhaps the superintendent would reach out to the principal at that building to connect with that parent so that they're getting that information that they're needing, or kind of a response that will satisfy them.
Thank you, Craig.
Sure. So as we all know, COVID knocked a real hole in student achievement as measured by standardized testing. What policies has Vancouver put in place to try to recover some of that loss, and how well are they working, and are there other things that the school district should be doing? So you want to start, Tracie?
Sure. I really take a comprehensive look at students when it comes to academic learning. I believe that in order for students to learn and to thrive and to be successful, we need to make sure that not only that they have the curriculum and the instruction that they need, but really that their basic needs are being met, that their social emotional needs are being met. If a student is hungry, if a student is in transition and houseless, or sleeping at, a family member's house, if they have mental health needs going on, they're not going to be able to access their classroom instruction like they need to. And I think the needs of our students have increased. And so, my approach was really to look at, like I mentioned earlier, making sure that our schools have trauma-informed practices, and so that we are, from classroom management to classroom setup and kind of the approach that we're looking, it's really a trauma-informed, system. And so that's really that lens that I bring to looking at, what we call the COVID learning loss is not necessarily, it encompasses the academic learning, but it's really looking at the whole system. How can we better meet our students' basic needs, our family community resource centers, counseling support, and also then looking at how can we increase our academic instruction, how can we make that better, how can we reach these students that maybe aren't attending or have inconsistent attendance and things like that.
Okay, so just calling a bunch of slackers and giving them 10 extra math worksheets. Not the way to go.
No, that's typically not what we would recommend.
School's changed. Larry, what are some of your ideas?
Well, I think that the items that Tracie mentioned are certainly ones that existed to some extent before, but I think that they were enhanced quite a bit just as COVID happened, and I think that they've improved and increased. So in addition to those, that is trying to make sure that there's a safe and supportive environment for the students, the district has gone through quite a bit just recently about how to be more supportive to the teachers. Originally, I think last year, they had set up a learning circles within each school run by the principals, and this year the board and the district are undertaking a coaching activity. Both of those are under the general auspices of the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. They've identified resources to support the school district, and I think the plans to execute those should have an impact on the gap to performance. Unfortunately, the data right now show that it's fairly persistent. And I'm curious how it goes.
Yeah, that's a real thing. So just kind of a follow-up question for both of you. Today's students I feel like they have more problems than the students did just a generation ago, 15 or 20 years ago. Can you talk a little bit about what today's students are facing? So what's different? What makes it more difficult these days to help these kids? So do you want to start, Tracie?
Sure. I mean, that's kind of a large question as far
well,
as like
it's
what
an assumption on my part too.
Well, and what the causes are, it's hard to say. I think society, has shifted a lot. Access to information is significant in terms of social media, and it's not just I know kind of what's going on in my school. I know what kids these days know what kids are talking about across the country or across the world, and so there's just a lot more instantaneous information, which I think is good, but it also has its drawbacks in terms of it just and being able to kind of filter out the positive information from not. I think resources are really stretched thin right now. As far as mental health resources in the community, so I think accessing that help when students need it is really tricky. I know, like previous to COVID, we did have community agencies, like Columbia River Mental Health, Family Solutions, groups like that we would work with to provide supports to students in the schools. A lot of that hasn't returned because there's just not the staffing for that. So access to those supports, I think, is really tricky. So, students are faced with a lot nowadays. There's a lot more. We have a lot more students in transition, and so stability in terms of housing, and parents are working multiple jobs. So there's a lot of factors that I think are playing into the needs of students increasing recently.
What's your take on it?
Well, we have the expert sitting next to me, so I can only add to what Tracie said.
She probably knows about that subject, yes.
I think she does. My observations are quite limited, and I don't think that these things are an improvement for the students' abilities to reflect on what they should be doing.
Okay.
And just the general, how does a student focus, and what supports we need to give them, and what supports we perhaps need to not give them, are interesting.
Along those lines, I'm curious, does the district have a policy regarding social media and or phone use in school? Or is that up to each individual building?
I believe it's up to each individual building, because I know we do have, different, a lot, I mean, there are negatives, we can talk about the negatives of phone usage, but, within a lot of classrooms too, teachers will have students use, their technology to, find resources, whether it's a laptop, a Chromebook, a phone, being able to find information and to instantaneously look up something to access that information. I mean, when I was younger, we had, you went to the library and looked in the encyclopedia. I mean, so there's just that access, I think is different. I think what we do need to be doing is, and what I've seen happen with a lot of our media assistants is really looking at, and our, teacher librarians looking at safe usage and teaching. We need to be teaching about how to use technology in responsible ways and safe ways.
Larry, do you have any thoughts to add to that? Use of phones and technology in school, and should there be a district-wide policy?
On the last question, I'm not sure that a district-wide policy really is the support for the teachers. So if the teacher wants to choose to use them for some particular moment, I'd rather we didn't have a policy that kept them from doing what they thought was the right thing. I often worry, for myself included, that the amount of time that you're willing to spend on a topic goes down when you have the access to this device. And a lot of the things you get through it are more commercial than they are educational. And in that sense, I'm not sure that it's that much of a benefit to our classroom environment to have them.
Craig, anything else?
Sure. Vancouver seems to have avoided some of the labor strife that's been in some of the other local districts. So you haven't had quite as many angry parent groups forming and stuff. What's the secret sauce, or have you just been lucky?
I don't think that it's just that Vancouver has been lucky. I mean, Vancouver did go on strike in 2018.
Right.
That was a different board. That was that was different leadership.
Yeah, we can't hang that on you.
Yeah. So so that was, that was, I feel like a different. There was just different leadership. I don't think that it's about luck. We did back in August. It wasn't the full VEA contract, but it was kind of what they call like wage opener, like kind of mini negotiation. That was settled, I believe, in mid-August, so before school even started. VEA and the district came to an agreement. I believe it happens before you even get to the bargaining table. I know there are a lot of there's a lot of intentional work that the district does. Our superintendent, for example, and the VEA president do monthly building visits together, and so they go out and visit different buildings as a team and talk about different issues that are happening. I know there's a lot of effort to engage in problem solving before it gets to the bargaining table. So before something becomes an issue that we have to bargain over, it's how can we problem solve beforehand. I feel like part of it too has been the trust that has been built over the past 3 years or so, from having a new board and our board, hiring a superintendent. I feel like we have a really solid team, and I feel like we're really intentional about those relationships and making sure that we are communicating and transparent and building that trust, so that when we talk about the budget and we talk about the parameters and the limitations, our community believes what we're saying and understands kind of the difficult work that we are facing, and is understanding of that. So it is not luck. It is a lot of intentional work that I believe that we are doing.
Larry, what's your take on that, and have Tracie and the other school board members given away the store to the union?
I don't think they've given away the store to the union. I think that the support of labor, the teachers in the school, is pretty much similar to the other school districts. So I don't think there's been any giving away. I think there's been a conscious decision in the current budget to try to retain as many teachers on the payroll as possible. And certainly the current board's plan for that has risks associated with it. We're taking our unassigned capital down to virtually nothing. The end of this year, or the planned end of this year, I haven't actually seen close. The school, or the fiscal year, closed at the end of August. We were spending ahead of our plan in July. The plan was to take unassigned capital from $13 million to $2 million. And on a budget of $420 million, that's a pretty small percentage. And what we're doing with that is making sure that we continue to pay salaries and hold payroll as high as we can as we spend down our reserves. So Sometime this year, we'll get our reserves down to very low, and we hope nothing happens that would require those reserves to be used for anything else. In the meantime, we'll see if the legislature comes through with any other ways to support the district, or we'll look at whether there are any way that we can re-engage the people who have gone elsewhere since last year, or since the pandemic, really. We've lost about 8% of the students that we had enrolled pre-pandemic.
And actually, we'll get to that, but if you were on the board, would you argue that that's fiscally imprudent? Would you want to do it differently?
Actually, I'd ask a question, which is, what are our risks for that we require that unassigned capital for? What's the likelihood that those will come to pass in the next year? I don't have a particular problem with the strategy of holding more teachers on the payroll and trying to have them close that gap in achievement for our students. I think those are within the charter of the school district. So I'd be more interested in, can we quantify the risks? Do we understand what they are? And then is this the path we want?
Tracie, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I believe we are fiscally responsible. I believe we took an approach that was maybe different from other districts in terms of trying to stair step down from the past few years we've had COVID relief money, and so that has provided extra income that we have invested in certain things. Our district was responsible in trying to look at wise investments with that COVID money and not putting it all into additional positions that then would have to go away after the money stops. And so looking at what are some other things we can invest in. But as we are facing not having that money, it's stair stepping down from that so that we're not doing drastic cuts like some of our neighboring districts are doing. And as we approach this next year, I mean, we are already, it's October, we're already talking about our budget from next year, how we want to go about looking at those decisions, how we want to go about communicating those decisions that might have to happen, depending on what the outlook is looking like. And going back to kind of what I had said earlier in being transparent and being communicative along the way so that our staff, our students, our families really know kind of what we're facing and what the decisions that we're making. And we have tasked our district to really make sure that we're looking creatively at options and making sure that we are thinking outside the box and that we are exploring all of our options so that we can have the least impact and the most financially responsible decision.
Larry, as Tracie mentioned, a couple of years ago, Vancouver got a new superintendent. From your viewpoint, how was that process?
3.5. But
Isn't that long?
or 2.5. I'm sorry,
Okay,
2.5.
that sounds better.
Yes, 2.5.
But how would you assess the process? What should they have done differently?
I thought their process was quite reasonable. I think it's certainly within their authority and expectation of the board. And they've been, as with all personnel decisions, fairly quiet about it, and I think that's admirable.
And then to follow up on something else you mentioned, student retention has been an issue for all public schools.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, and what role can the board play in reversing that?
I think that's probably a mix of different things, and I don't think I know. Actually, I'm certain I don't know.
If you did, you could take it on the road yourself.
You're right. Yeah. So, talking to people in the last few months, there have been several reasons that I've heard, and they're exactly what you'd expect, which is, we want our students back in school. The public school remote learning is not what I think my students should have. Therefore, I will try to find something else for them. And now that you've made that change, you'll just continue with it. Continue with where you are, which is what most of us do. And then I think that there are some who believe that they want more ethics training, either religious-based or not. And they're pulling students either into private schools or private religious schools or into homeschooling to get that. The private school homeschooling increases have only been about, at least for the people who register with the state as they're expected to by law, that's only 2.5% of the students statewide. But we've lost 8%, and as you pointed out, other districts are similar. So where the other, 5% went, or 6%, I don't know. I think it would be worth looking at the data to say, okay, here are the students that went. Let's try to go contact some of them to understand what their needs are. It would be inappropriate for me as a private citizen to have that list, and I don't have it.
You think are there some students that just dropped off the grid and they are not getting an education? Their parents just aren't sending them to school?
I don't know. You should
Yeah,
ask
it's
Tracie.
Yeah, so it's hard to know.
I'm sure the board has talked about that, so I would turn to Tracie with that question.
Excellent.
Well, I mean, there certainly are families who have made, a choice, to leave public education. But I think there's also demographer data that shows that the people that are having children has decreased. Like we have kind of known that our kindergarten classes are going to be smaller. We are graduating larger classes and our incoming classes are smaller. And so we naturally, just through the demographics of our area, are not having those younger children that are coming up through our schools. The age appropriate level of 5 and 6 year olds that are getting ready to start school. And so I think part of it is just kind of natural. To your question about are there students that have fallen off of the grid, there probably are. There are students that are in transition who are assumed to have withdrawn, or we heard that they moved and perhaps they did not re-enroll in the district that the family is now living in. I see that happen a lot in my job, with students coming in and out, who are have special education and trying to track down records and figure out where kids went. Does this district know about this student that's coming in? So there are just naturally from more families that are kind of bouncing around and are in transition. Sometimes they do fall off the grid, and I think it takes adults that know the students and that care about those students and that are willing to call families and track them down and find out, where did you go? Let me connect you with your school. Let me help you with enrolling. You don't have to have if you're in transition, you don't have to have all of these documents that you normally would to register. So our counselors and our other support people that are family resource coordinators that are connecting with those families to get them enrolled and to get them attend. There's amazing work that's happening to try to do that. But certainly I think there are just circumstances where students do kind of fall out of contact with their school system.
I want to go back, I believe Larry mentioned earlier, talk about creating an education that can meet kids where they are, and people of different abilities. What is the status of the program for high achieving students in Vancouver?
Our highly capable programming.
Okay.
So we have taken that programming into kind of taken a deeper look at our highly capable programming. I believe it was over the course of last year. It was actually, I believe, the year before, when some parents were bringing that up to us, and there were some decisions about perhaps getting rid of the more self-contained model of highly capable programming. At the time, our board really said, hold up, we need to really look at this. We really need to look at kind of what we're doing and the program changes that we're making. So over the course of last year, We had tasked the district with really forming like an advisory group, and so really looking at what the research says around the highly capable programming, looking at how services are implemented, looking at how students are identified for highly capable programming, and really using kind of that equity lens, not only in like how students are identified, but also an equity lens from the money that's being spent for highly capable, and how much money are we, of the highly capable funds that we receive, how much are we investing in the self-contained model versus services for highly capable that are out in the neighborhood schools. And our parent advisory group, I should say it had a lot of parents. There were also staff members, principals, and things like that. The team came back with some recommendations about looking at how we can rethink some of the services that are happening, looking at how students are chosen for a more self-contained model versus services that are out in the community.
So is that program still in place?
It is. It's the students that are being identified for more of a self-contained model. It's really kind of the exceptional of the exceptional and the twice exceptional. So students that are highly capable and maybe also have an IEP for some reason or another, and really looking at how we can also increase the supports for students that are out in their neighborhood schools. And so a lot of times what we were hearing was the students that were getting their highly capable services in the classrooms, it was really up to the gen ed teacher to try to figure out how to differentiate to the highest learners and their lowest learners, and kind of spreading real wide. And so it's looking at how can we support, how can we better support those teachers and better support those students.
Larry, is the board taking a reasonable approach to that, or what would you advocate?
I think that they're following the law quite accurately. I personally think that we can do better. I hope that we can do better. Right now, we have kind of an odd way of dealing with highly capable students. We have a couple of testing points during their education that we identify them as highly capable or part of the general population. And then the state gives more money to enhance the education for those students that are identified. So there's a specific budget for that, and we spend it on students that we identify as highly capable. We do that a couple of times. There's a pretty hard cutoff on what percentage you have of those students. I know that we're, as you said, trying to deal with the difference between high achieving and highly capable. That is, some students from lower income backgrounds or more challenged preparation for K through 12 often don't come in as high achieving, even though they may indeed be highly capable. So the district is trying to work to identify the people who will do the most with the education that we're presenting them. How fast can they go? My concern is more around what do we do with the people in the 95th percentile or the 90th percentile? Are they just, part of we're going to get them to basic and they may check out? I worry about how we deal with plateauing. That is, that the student is prepared by their families and their parents, and they're doing very well, and they get to the school and they're not identified as highly capable but high achieving, and now they stagnate. So I think that there's an opportunity to improve that. I'm sure that the teachers have a lot of opinions on how to do that, and I'm sure they're already doing a lot of it. But that's a concern of mine for this very simple model of high capable and everybody else.
How would you do it differently?
Again, this is is there a way that we can provide supports, some additional support for the teaching staff, and what can they do to optimize the learning for the students that we have in our district? And I'm not a guru. They are.
Now, and I'm curious for the most part, you seem to be pretty complimentary about Vancouver schools and the board.
Mhm.
What complaints do you have?
In the context of teamwork from the bench, why would I do complaints? I think we can always get better. I don't know that I'd look at that as a complaint. I'd look for opportunities to improve. We certainly have challenges. Our students certainly have challenges, as do our staff.
Craig?
I might be fresh out of questions, Greg. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, that's,
It's really been interesting talking to both of you. I feel like I'm
Well,
learning
thank
a
you.
lot about students and what the
Well, good.
situation
Yes,
is like
and
in
I-
schools.
yeah, I do not envy people who are in the schools or in charge of education. But with that, we'll move on. Take just a minute. Give us your final pitch for why voters should support you, and feel free to mention any endorsements that you want to mention. And we'll start with Larry.
Okay. I think I've said this to Tracie before. I think we're on the same page. I view that we're both volunteering to be a member of this team of 5 people going forward for the next 2 years. And I think it's up to the voters to choose what they perceive they want as focus and skills on their board of 5 players.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Tracie?
So our board has done a lot of work over the past 4 years that I have been on the school board, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm proud of the work that we've done. But what I have learned about this level of leadership is that change does take time. I think we have achieved a lot of goals, but there are a lot of goals that we have ahead of us. We have spent the past year and a half or so working on our strategic plan, which is a vision for the next 5 years. What do our graduates look like? What do we want our student experience to be? And we've put a lot of work into that in terms of having visionary goals, but also measurable goals. We have those in place. And I think that we need that consistency of our team to move forward. We have a really solid team. We have differences in opinions and perspectives, but as a team, I feel like we work really well together in balancing each other out. And I believe that perspective that I bring is really needed. I'm on our Inclusive Practices Committee in the district as the board member for that committee, and as we look to really help our students, looking at how we can meet the needs of our students with specialized needs, providing them a more inclusive education. And I think that perspective that I bring is really important. That's why I'm running for re-election, because I want to continue to do the work that we have started. I don't think that there's kind of a hard stopping point. We're just continuing on. As far as notable endorsements, I have been endorsed by the Washington Education Association, Vancouver Education Association, One America Votes, several labor organizations in the community. Representative Monica Stonier has endorsed me, and I'm proud to have the support of different community organizations. So.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Best
you.
of luck.
Thank you.